Well, welcome. We're going to get started and get right to the main event. We're real excited. Thank you guys for being here. This is a partnership between Richmond Public Schools and Partners in the Arts, University of Richmond, and it's supported by the U.S. Department of Education. So it's our Arts Integrated Learning Certificate project together. So we're thrilled to have folks from either of those cohorts here, but then also lots of other folks. Again, we love teachers. We love you guys. We appreciate this time. I know Wednesday's your half day, so thanks for being here. Humbled to see all the work going on. I love listening to my kids' classes and eavesdropping on Miss Jersild's English class and Mr. Bergheimer's history class and science with Wingfield. I feel like I'm learning a lot this semester. So we're thrilled about this group because what you're going to see today is really the culmination of this certificate project and the training we're doing, where teachers are looking at artists or events or resources in the community and coming up with an idea to implement and reach students in different ways. So this project totally came out of the brains of Fleming and Jersild and Fawkes and Rainey and Ai-jung Kim. So if you want to be able to do that, sign up for our courses. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to that team. Thanks again for everybody for being here.
We're good?
We are great. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bookmaking, Collaborative Planning, and A Long Walk to Water. Just so you know, this is a 2-hour workshop. That's what you're getting into. My name is Jonathan Fawkes, and let's get right to it. All right, so a few of the materials that you're going to need today. You're going to need a few blank pieces of paper, pens, pencils. You might even need some markers at some point. On the next slide, we're going to get into an overview about what it is that we are doing and how we came to this decision, the skills that cross over, what this actual project is going to look like. And then for the assignment, it is, you guys are covering that. I'm going to move that. The assignment is working with the EL curriculum to find these arts integrated learning opportunities. And then we're also going to have the opportunity together to practice drawing from a reference and creating some thumbnails and a little bit of storyboarding. All right, so as our overview, we're going to have a few collaborators come on a little later to help explain how we came to this decision for this project, what skills cross over, as well as what the final product will look like. All right, so again, my name is Jonathan Fawkes. I teach 7th grade ELA. Then we also got Diane Fleming, our amazing ELA instructional coach. We've got Kira Jersild, go ahead and wave on the screen, 7th grade, 8th grade ELA. And then Ai-jung Kim, our artist and bookmaker, making it all happen.
So here's a quote to set us off. A learning environment that nurtures creative thought and expression is the catalyst for student transformation and achievement. This is from Lisa Donovan and Sarah Anderberg's book, Teaching as Curator, and is kind of forming what we're trying to talk about today and our goal in general. So how we came into bookmaking. Bookmaking is completely new to me. It was new to Ms. Fleming and Mr. Fawkes, and that's why we had to have, obviously, the help of our artist, Ai-jung Kim. When we're looking at our units, which we're going to get into a little bit more, especially with our task, you always want to plan with the end goal in mind. So choosing what kind of art integrated projects should happen pretty early on when looking at that unit. The first thing we did as a group when we're looking at these modules. And this can apply to EL curriculum or to basically any curriculum that's kind of separated out into units, is examine the theme of the modules. Theme is a huge part of this project in particular, both in literature and in our final art product. So understanding the multiple different themes that are in the book you're reading, plus the theme of the module, was where we started. And then every single EL module has a performance task. That performance task is the final big end product that's trying to draw upon all the skills that you taught, all the content that you taught, and have some sort of, usually arts integrated naturally, but project at the end. So deciding what kind of art form makes sense to really match up with the tasks that are already happening naturally in your curriculum should happen pretty early on. So we decided on bookmaking in the beginning of the units, and that's when all the other plans started to formulate once we had that end product in mind.
So when we think about like the end in mind, it's really important that we think about like what's the driving force behind what we're trying to teach our students. So this isn't just like an EL, this can be in history, this can be in science. So what is that we really want students to come away with when they're looking at this curriculum and they're looking at these different units that we're teaching them? For EL teachers, like you can look at the overview that happens like in the very beginning of the EL curriculum, because it really does set the tone for like what the curricula is really hoping to impart to students. With EL, like another really great resource is to use the notes from the designer and also in the module overview, because it really does get to help us see like what themes are going to be focused on. And then looking at the module 3 overview and reading that and focusing on the format, because a lot of times like the end goal in mind, actually, as Kira mentioned, has like a performance task already planned, and that performance task lends itself naturally to an arts integrated lesson. And then lastly, like as we're thinking about like incorporating the arts into our classes, like who could we connect with, partner in the arts, or could I connect with an AILC coach to help with identifying art strands, or connecting me with an artist to help me actually launch the idea. So for English teachers for K-8 and even for English teachers who are 9-12, and for history teachers especially, like thinking about the themes that are really happening like in the units that we're studying, because like theme in literature and art and even in every content is a driving force between being able to find those connections. So if a theme that we're learning about is like war and adversity, what other themes like would I be able to pull in, or what other art would I be able to kind of like help pick up like war and adversity? If my theme is like identifying myself, like how can I, like what art form do I think would help me amplify the idea of self and how I see myself in this world? And so themes really help make students make those connections, not only to art, but then also to the content, because themes are universal. It doesn't apply to like one content at one time and one person. It applies to any person learning about this topic, regardless of time and regardless of background, because themes tend to be very universal. And then when I'm thinking about like EL as a literacy coach, I really look at the guiding questions and the big ideas like within the content. And so those first few pages of the content overview and of the module overviews that oftentimes get skipped, I find to be like the most important ones that I have to go back and actually read, because it helps me think about like those big ideas of like how I want to emphasize, or what idea I want to emphasize with our students, so that I can look for a potential art integration or an art connection.
And as an artist coming into the project, so thinking about theme, as Diane was saying, like having it's universal but also personal connections. So in particular with this project, students can choose an aspect of the theme, and with with a longer story, they can outline something that's maybe more in depth. So that's why this particular project fit for this, what we're about to show later.
And then lastly, like what art forms make sense. So as we're thinking about all of the different art forms, like moving beyond like maybe like just the obvious. I was recently working with our theater teacher and talking about another arts integrated lesson that we're hoping to launch. And he was like, oh, we can totally do monologues for theater. And I had not even considered monologue as like a theater or like as the art form that maybe that we could have our students tap into. And so like, as we're thinking about all of these art forms, like what beyond like the obvious could we have students do, but then also like what elements can we have students focus on? Because art forms really help encourage students to develop their voice and their vision, not only of themselves, but then also as an artist and their authentic self.
So in taking on this project, we ran into one or two problems, and that's to be expected when you get excited about a project and you really want to get it off the ground. And so one of the biggest problems that we ran into was not having enough time to complete the performance task. And while we did have some successes with a lot of the students, as we'll see later on in the slide deck, the solution is to start earlier. We use this time as a learning process, and we're going to try and start the project in Unit 2 when the texts are a little bit shorter, and then that way the students have some familiarity with the process when it is brought up again.
Every time we do an art project, and like Jonathan's saying, making sure we start early, there are all sorts of connections that I notice later where I'm like, oh, I could have said this 3 weeks earlier and it would have connected better to that performance task. So emphasis and theme were two big literary concepts that really spoke well to art. A lot of times, if you're trying to define a word like emphasis in a text, anytime there's a big blocked paragraph, there's going to be some students that kind of disconnect and they don't necessarily understand a main idea or what is being highlighted in that. However, if you look at a picture and one person is large and everyone else is behind them in the background, the emphasis of the eye on that one person is very clear. So if you establish, we're going to do art and we're going to make sure we continue to talk about it throughout, there are all these terms in English that can be explained with art and with a piece of text or blocked text. And then there'll be some students that might relate to the art a little better and make those connections quicker. So it just gives kind of another medium to explain something and make sure that everybody, no matter what learning style they have, no matter how they're relating to the topic, it might make that light bulb click on.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, yeah, when you have to actually draw something, you really have to think about it in a different way. So it can be a great way to visualize the emphasis, which we'll do later in the second half.
These are just some pictures from some of these students. I know, so we decided to turn this in using videos, which is really cool. We'll talk about that a little more later with more pictures, but we wanted to include this early on so you had kind of a vision in your head about what that end goal is. And I also wanted to include them because I think we undermine the pride behind having a real tangible project in your hands, especially in a virtual setting where everything is in the laptop, you shut it, you go about your day. So this was one of the first times in virtual teaching I was able to say, what did you make? Show me what it is. It's not just a picture, it's actually a real book with you as the author. And that kind of confidence you can put in a child by having that in front of them, I felt was awesome. It helped a lot in the understanding of the topics.
So we wanted to give you an idea of like what this actually looked like when we were presenting this. So how we launched our project was that we have 3 English teachers like that teach 7th grade. And because we didn't have access to Aizhang to go to every single one of those classrooms, because that was like too difficult for her to manage. And not only that, there's just simply not that many time, like that much time in the day. And she cannot replicate herself to be in 2 places at one time. We decided that we were going to combine classes. And so in the virtual space, this lent itself really nicely, because what we had was that we had all 3 English teachers at one time in one virtual classroom. And Aizhang was presenting to an entire group or a larger group of 7th grade students. And so we wanted you to see like just like a 2-minute clip of like what this looked like when we first launched.
Hi, is there any way you can turn up the volume? I can't hear anything.
Diane, when you go to share, there's a share computer sound button on Zoom in the lower left corner when you select your share screen. I know you guys are all Google Meet, so this is a little different. So it took me, I had to enlist my daughter to get me into my first couple Google meetings because I just kept hanging up.
Is made out
Is
of
that better?
cereal box.
I'll go
cardboard.
back.
Yep.
You can use whatever.
Yep.
I apologize. Thank you for that.
Okay, so
Yep.
nice to meet you all. And my name is Miss Kim, if you didn't come in until just now. So we are going to be doing some drawing practice today. I'm an artist and an illustrator, and I love children's books, and I'm working on my own as well. So today I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about your project. So this is your children's book. This is not at all what you're gonna do. This is a drawing that I made previously. It's like a copy of a drawing, but this structure is what you're gonna do. So it's gonna have a cover. This one is made out of cereal box cardboard. You can use whatever cardboard you have at home. We'll talk about that more next week, but I just want to show you the structure. So you open it up. This is pasted down to the cardboard. This is called a title page. It has the title, your name, the date. If you want to do a dedication to someone, you could put it here. There's other places you could put it. We'll talk about that later, but you'll have a title page. And then your story begins. What will you create? So you're going to write and draw in this book. And this isn't the subject matter that you're dealing with, but this is just an example. And I did not finish this. This is, but it shows you can keep adding more and more pages, as many as you need to tell your story. Your teachers are going to talk to you about the story elements that you need to include, but it'll be as long as it needs to be, as long as you include those elements, and then the back cover. So this is a structure, and then it actually ends up being kind of like an accordion. It's called a flutter book. So we'll talk about that more next week. But you can just use regular computer paper if you like, or if you have thicker drawing paper, you can use that. Okay, so nice to meet you all. And my name is Miss Kim, if you didn't come in until.
So you could see that like for our students, they were able to see like the end product, what exactly was going to be expected of them. And then Aizhang continued like through that lesson to be able to break it down so that the students could begin making their own flutter book as we were beginning to think about the project and our end task.
Okay, so
I apologize. And then with storyboarding, like storyboarding was another lesson that we worked on with Aizhang and our students, because it really honed in on our English content and then also the art content. It also provided like the perfect formative assessment for us, because it really allowed us to see, like, do our students understand narrative and do they understand elements of fiction? And so as we're thinking about like, how do we assess students, like as we're thinking about an arts integrated lesson, like things like storyboard do provide like a really great window for us to formatively assess our students in the skills for English content. In history and in science, you would also be able to understand like how deeply they know the content before like actually allowing students to move on like into before they present their own book.
And so remember with thumbnails were drawing really small. So this is how I created mine. And I thought about like, okay, a mouse told his mother and father that he was going to on a trip to the seashore. This is where he's telling them. But I decided actually to add something where he's just dreaming about it, okay? So remember with the emphasis? So I'm gonna break this up. So I'll show you what I ended up doing. So that part isn't even said, but I'm gonna say dreaming, just a little note. Okay, page 1. A mouse told his mother and father that he was going on a trip to the seashore. This is where he tells them. So I'm gonna say page 2 and 3 maybe. We are very alarmed, they cried. The world is full of terrors. You must not go. This is where they're telling of the terrors that might happen. I have made my decision, said the mouse firmly. I've never seen the ocean, and it is high time that I did. Nothing can make me change my mind. So, on here, what is the emphasis, say, on this drawing? Could be a mood, it could be an action. The mouse, yes, visually it's the mouse. But think about also the text. I've made my decision, said the mouse firmly. Yeah, a thought, right? And do you see? Look at his body language. How does he look to you? Sad. Okay, he could look sad. Yeah, he's serious. Pressure.
Determined.
And so, I think Ayana raised her hand. Frustrated. Frustrated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because his parents just told him like, don't go. It's like, nope. Crossing my arms, I'm going. So, and this is page 4. This is page 5. So I'm kind of working backwards, honestly. Normally, I would kind of break up your story. I know some of you also did snapshots of what some main events or images. You can do that. But also think about like maybe next to this, I'm gonna circle the parts of emphasis. So this part, I wanted to emphasize the terrors they're talking about. That's my emphasis. I've made my decision, said the mouse firmly. So firmly, I could even write, he's determined. That's my emphasis. And so when you go through your, and you're breaking things up into pages, think about what is your emphasis? And so I'm not going to show like a picture in the background and all this stuff. I'm actually just showing the mouse because someone said the mouse is the most important. Yeah. And his expression is the most important. That's my emphasis. And so remember with thumbnails, we're drawing really small. And so remember with thumbnails, we're drawing really small.
We're just going to keep watching the same video over and over again. Thank you for giving me grace. I'm so accustomed to presenting in meat.
watching that back, it just brings me back to all the awesome annotating and all the things that Kim was doing. So reminds me that we need to do arts integration at all times, even without a project in mind. I noticed while doing this, prior to having Young in the classroom, is that this project really lends itself to student choice. So there's so many times we're looking for this right or wrong answer, and the kids, big dreams, they want to do what they want to do, and they want it to feel like theirs. So having a story that has a clear rubric, but the ability to really do what you want to do with your characters was really fun for the kids. I think that helped a lot. Scaffolding written assignments. One of my biggest takeaways from this is that students know what they want to do, but have a hard time starting. So prior to even storyboarding, having some sort of organizer, some sort of way and outline to get your ideas down on paper can really help. So what we did here, and storyboarding lends itself very well to this assignment, was we created plot arcs and plot diagrams of what we thought we wanted to happen in our stories. I was able, because we had a little bit of extra time, to do one-on-one conferences and plans where you're kind of talking and calling on people individually before we got in the workshop, which I think is very important virtually, because the students don't necessarily tell you when they're falling behind or when they don't know what to do. So I would really encourage, for any art project, having a lot of time prior to scaffold, make sure everyone is on the right page and knows what they're going to do before you get into the workshop would be crucial in them actually completing the project. So that was a huge part of making sure we had a plan. And then keeping everybody on the same kind of, you're going to turn in your written portion this first day. We're going to write just a few notes about here's what happens in the beginning, here's the climax, here's the falling action, here's the resolution. That's turned in with a due date. And then the next time we all come back to it, we're going to do a workshop where we practice drawings. And then let's turn that in to make sure everyone completed that. Then we'll have the storyboard. Let's turn that storyboard in. And all of those moments with grades leading up really help at the end, because inevitably you're going to have students that don't complete the project. But you don't want to ding somebody for weeks of work if they don't have that final end goal. So if you have kind of scaffolded moments where you're checking in one-on-one, you're giving an opportunity for, okay, maybe you didn't like the writing portion, but you did great on this. Here's half credit for here. That really helped me keep the students on track and actually participate in the workshops well.
And a few of my takeaways. One, I really want to encourage you all to create together with your students. One of my favorite aspects of this project was actually making the book along with them, so that they could see the mistakes that I made. They could see me mess up and start over, and they could see my final result. And then I could read that to them and model that, so that when it came time for them to do their video, to do their presentation, they would have an accurate or a very good example. Another thing that I want to touch on is the availability of the resources and references. So when you're actually having them write or having them draw, making sure that the notes that either Aizheng has supplied us with, or external resources, are somewhere visible for them to access if they maybe missed class that day, so that they can at least attempt or try and get something down on their paper for that book.
And I just want to take a second and say that, like, the strongest model that we can provide our students is seeing, like, as having the students see us do it with them. So modeling for them, like, this is why I think I'm going to do it this way. I don't like the way that I did this. Having us fail and then having students see us fail is sometimes the greatest teacher that we could provide for our students. And so I know that oftentimes we don't position ourselves in classrooms where we're the ones who are taking risks and failing in front of students, because we're not, like, we don't always see ourselves as like the one who's supposed to fail, but it really does speak volumes to the kids, and they actually learn so much from that external thinking about like our thought process, about why we came to certain decisions, not only like in our writing, but then also in our art, that actually proved to be very, very, very instructive and very helpful.
Here's some more stills from some of the kids in our classes. As you can see, some of them went all the way and drew and colored in. Some of them did more pencil and black and whites, and either one was fine as long as you're communicating that story, which was always the goal, is how can we communicate this to the viewer in a storyboard fashion. So just some awesome screenshots. Here's some more. Yeah, lots of color. Some of the paper is really big, some of it's smaller. Sometimes they did, help me, what's the term? Double spread versus single? Yes.
Yeah, double page spread is when it goes all across in both sides of both parts of the pages, and then single page, just one of the pages. So
lots of room for student choice. And you also see in the top right, we have someone that worked on their drawings in one of the earlier workshops and then wanted to use them in her book. So she cut them out and pasted them in, which was also always an option. So you're kind of, maybe you don't like how you did the paper in the beginning, just cut it out and let's redo it later. There's some more.
So we thought that was really important for you guys today to actually start thinking about, like, so if I were to plan an AILC lesson, like what would this look like for me? And then how would I go about it? And so our team, what we did was that we created a landing page for you that Stacy's going to drop in the chat in just a second. And we're going to put you in breakout rooms to give you time to collaborative plan and to also like talk and brainstorm with some of your grade level band peers. So we have K2 in a room. We have 3-5 in one room, 6-8 in a room, and then 9-12 in a room. I understand and realize that like if you're in a room with someone, they might not teach your exact content and they may not teach your exact subject. But the idea is that like when we're with like-minded people and we begin to think and dream about, well, this is what I'm going to be teaching like in this upcoming like spring as we come back from spring break, this is a place where I could potentially like input like an arts integrated lesson. And so the directions on the screen are actually geared for EL, but please take this to know that like when you're thinking about this upcoming unit that you're going to be teaching after spring break, what are some of the guiding themes or what's some of the guiding information that you really want students to walk away with, right? And then like, as you think about those guiding questions and you think about those overarching themes, like what art form do you think would lend itself to doing that? And this is a perfect opportunity for you to talk to your peers around Richmond to start thinking about like, oh, I could potentially do this as well. When we come back, we're going to give you 15 minutes in the breakout room just so that you can brainstorm and talk. And the landing page has not only things for you to consider, but then a wealth of resources for you to look at. When you come back, you'll be given an opportunity to share or ask questions. And then from that 2 to 2:15 time, we'll take a short break and I'll give you directions before we get there too. So Stacy's going to drop a landing page for you in the chat.
Which I think Rob just did. The
Oh, thank you, Rob.
So I think if we're ready, everyone will go to their breakout rooms and I'll keep you posted with some countdowns when you're in there. Ready? There you go.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I just wanted to reiterate that, although that we, did this bookmaking project in English, that this really can be implemented in any curriculum. So if I think about like, what's the driving force or what's the driving information that I really want students to like walk away with, like this really can be completed in any coursework and in any content, because the arts just really helps it helps really drive the curriculum and make it really personable for the students. So we wanted to give you guys time to potentially share out potential ideas for the good of the group and to ask any questions of like any of us who are presenting.
All right, I'll talk. I
Thank
teach
you.
Spanish at Thomas Jefferson High School. I went to Pratt. I was supposed to be an art teacher. So I have a license to do both. I'm teaching Spanish. I'm from Cuba. I worked at newspapers for 25 years to get to know my background. Nobody reads the paper anymore, so I got my plan B going on. And what I do is incorporate art with most everything. They write a poem in Spanish, they have to create an illustration. I'm trying to figure out, in the public schools right now, we're virtual. We were just talking about this in the breakout room. What supplies do they have at home? Even though some schools gave out bags with supplies, people didn't pick them up. Do they have copy machines? Ha ha ha. Kids can't go outside. Because I have a friend, Sam Hundley, he used to work in the paper in Virginia. He finds trash, he puts sculpture together. They can't do that. If they can't draw, we try to do collage. So one project I'd like to do is discover Guernica, with the history of why Hitler burnt the book and why Franco banned it until 1973 when he died. Why is it the ultimate painting of peace? I'm teaching high school, and it's an IB school. So we were learning about landfill harmonic. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's outside of, in Paraguay, the main city, there's a dump. And they made instruments. People made instruments, violins and cellos. These children are traveling around the world. So I wanted them to make an instrument. Oh my God, that was so, like Picasso's. So how do you go about in this virtual world, or even in the future when you got a cramped room with copy paper, Scotch tape, oh, everything looks nice, but what's the reality? How do you guys do this? I want to do it. They'll learn. I've worked with them. I'm rambling on, but it's the frustration in the background. How are you going to get this stuff? How do you guys fine tune this so that it works? I want to steal your secrets. Hello, anybody?
Fox, go ahead.
So speaking to the availability of resource, like the materials, we were aware that not everybody was going to have blank white copy paper. We were aware that not everybody was going to have all the colored pencils and markers and paints. So we had to, we were real with ourselves. Like, some of these are going to be on loose leaf paper. Some of these are going to be in just straight up pen drawings, black and white. And we took that into account, and we were ready for those types of submissions. And we encouraged them, like, hey, look, let us know if you don't have these things so that we can be ready for when you turn your project in, and we won't fault you for that. The fact that you even took the time to try and create this, we're going to give you credit and acknowledge that.
We also had when the students were creating their books and creating the covers, we were asking students to use cereal boxes, because a lot of our students do have cereal, or they have a Cliff Bar box or any sort of box, so even being really creative about, as you're saying, the resources that they have, the access that they have. If they don't have paper, can they take the cereal box, open up the cereal box, and use the cardboard as their blank canvas? And I think it does take reimagining and troubleshooting with our kids to figure out who has access, who has what, and who doesn't. But I think with not only the students' desire and the teachers' ingenuity, that you can definitely cross,
Could I cut in real quick?
Please.
I show them pictures of Picasso's collages, where he used corrugated cardboard, matchbooks, whatever. I also show them what the artwork that was created in the Holocaust. If you've been to the Holocaust Museum here and in DC, there was no art supply store there. My dad had a friend who made little wooden shoes. He had the numbers on his forearm. That's how he survived his artwork. There's all these, so all of a sudden they woke up a lot of kids. I could use anything I want. And that's why I was successful in that one illustration where they had to create a poem and do an illustration for that. Because that's what I did. I'm an illustrator. So if I'm going to teach something, I'm going to do it the best way I can. art is, it's not just drawing. Everything we're looking at, you know, I went to a school where there's industrial design, everything we have, an artist, somebody had to come up with that idea, and it's coming through, but they're in their homes now. Some guys, you know, the camera might come on and they're in bed sleeping. And the little sister says, aren't you supposed to be? The best one was when a mom came by a girl and she went, boom, put that phone down. You in class, you know. I wish I had her in my, anyway. This is very challenging. And hey, I'm up for the task. This is art has opened the world for me. And you know, I was one of those Peter Pan kids. You ever hear of those? I was sent here to the United States by my mother with 14,000 other kids by myself. I have books that I've drawn. You guys, I didn't see my mom till I was 11. I was 7 when I left Cuba. That's how I got into art, by drawing about the books that I was reading and sending them back to, little did I know that's how I was going to make a living. And so I use myself as an example. If you guys, you don't have to be in this place all the time. One person in the breakout room said that the kids aren't allowed to leave their home to even take a picture because it's dangerous. Hey, this, you know, art opens up the world.
Man, you said it just like we wrote it.
Well, I didn't read anything. I just know it. You know,
That's great. So
anyway, so I was so happy to see this class.
That's awesome.
Every time I try to get into an art class, I get kicked out because I teach Spanish now. You know,
so
I'm not one of the gang.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Sorry.
No.
Any other breakout shares that you guys want to share?
We shared how the L education incorporated art a little bit with the monologues and acting out portions of the text. And they have to write their own essay and they have to create their own book. But I guess I feel like now, seeing the physical books that you guys are sharing, I feel like I cheated, because I virtually just automatically went to a digital version of a book and was like, ebook, automatically in my mind, ebook. So I didn't even think to try and, you know, do a real physical book. So now it's making me think like, maybe we should have did a real book instead of an ebook. So it just made me think when I was in my group.
Miss Gary, I think that there's a place for both. It doesn't have to be either or, it can be and, you know, so I like starting with the ebook was a perfect place, maybe. So for now, like when you come back after spring break, maybe you try like a, you know, like a hands-on book with your kiddos, because the ebook was the perfect way to get their, you know, like to sharpen their skills. And so I just want to encourage you, don't think of it as it has to be either or, it can be and. We can live in both spaces.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So just jumping into this sounds, you know, as far as implementing it actually every day, are there little ways that you guys have explored, you know, maybe implementing this throughout the day rather than this just being one big lesson? Because following along with the curriculum, my students are already behind. But I am new and the opportunity is there. So if there's any little ways of integrating art throughout the day, I would love your suggestions.
I think like when you think about incorporating art throughout your day, you have to really like ask yourself, like, what skill is art going to help me like build upon like in my classroom? So like, we're not just like simply like throwing in art for art's sake, but that like conceptually, like they're growing like in their art skills, but then also like in their content skills, you know? So like, if we do want to say like, for example, like with reading, regardless of your content, right? Like for comprehension purposes, you know, after they read a passage, to chunk it, which is one strategy for comprehension, but then to ask students like, so after we read this, like, what is the main idea? What's the emphasis? What emphasis can I place on my drawing to show that this was the main idea that was put into this passage? And I think like when we start to think about it in very small conceptual ways, it becomes much easier, as opposed to like, as you said, like, it doesn't have to be this really big project. But like asking myself, like, what are my students like really struggling with, and how conceptually can art help influence their understanding of that?
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent question.
And I also think that I'm going to be showing in the next half some different techniques using illustration. And yes, you can turn it into an actual physical book, but you don't have to go all the way there, you know, right away. It's actually better, you know, you can work on drawing and as a way to just connect with some of the material, just because some kids really enjoy it, and that will alone, the enjoyment will make them connect a little bit better with the concept. And then you can maybe work on like an illustration, and then you could, you know, include text in an illustration. So you can kind of keep building. It doesn't all have to be like, let's just make a book, you know? So, and we'll be doing some of that soon. So after the break.
Awesome.
I would
Is-
say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Jersel.
I was just going to speak to feeling behind in curriculum and then adding another thing is something that all of us struggle with. I mean, every single teacher that I've talked to that does arts integration has that same concern. So I guess finding time to really pause and say we're behind, or we didn't complete as much as I wanted to today, but I am going to pause for this art because I feel like it has a place and a beneficial spot in us getting and actually understanding the concept. Is the place I had to go to do arts integration. Is, yeah, maybe sometimes it'll take away from moving forward with the standard, what we're supposed to do that day, but the understanding might be greater if we have arts integration, and that's the ultimate goal. So it's a balance. It's really hard, but it definitely can help in the long run.
If you have questions, we are going to come back at 2:15. So we do want to like give you guys like a short break. When you do come back, it's necessary that you enter through the Google Meet through Sketch so that you can get credit for the second half. And I encourage you to please come back, because we'll be doing art, and then we'll actually be art making when we come back. And so we'll be working with Aizhang, and she's going to lead us through some simple lessons so that we can try and practice just like our kids will.
So we do leave out of this room though?
Yep, you can leave out of
Okay.
this room, and then we'll see you at 2:15 and just rejoin through Google Meet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, James.